The boy was freezing, bruised, and barely 10 years old when he curled up beside a dumpster behind a boxing gym in Los Angeles. But when his eyes met Sylvester Stallone's, everything changed. Years later, that same boy would return to repay Sly in a way neither of them could have imagined. Before we dive into this inspirational story, let us know where you're watching from. We'd love to hear your thoughts. The street was nearly empty that night, except for the distant hum of traffic and the biting Pacific wind rolling in like a quiet storm. Stallone had just locked the back door of his private boxing gym, tucked into a quiet corner off Pico Boulevard. It wasn't open to the public, never had been. It was more of a personal refuge, a place thick with the scent of worn leather, chalk dust, and the past. He was tugging his hoodie tighter, keys in one hand, phone in the other, already thinking about the hot shower waiting at home, when he spotted the shape, small, motionless, curled up beside a rusted dumpster behind the dry cleaner next door, almost invisible in the dark. Stallone narrowed his eyes. "Hey!" he called out, his voice low but steady. No reply. He stepped closer, boots crunching softly over the gravel. That's when the shape stirred a boy, no older than 10. Black, thin, his lips cracked from the cold, and a jacket at least 2 sizes too small. His eyes flicked open, wide and startled, but not afraid. Just tired. So tired. He sat up slowly, arms wrapped tightly around his knees, breath visible in the cold air. "You all right?" Stallone asked, crouching to his level. The boy blinked once, nodded, and then shook his head. "Just cold," he whispered, "and hungry." His voice cracked like dry bark, and for Stallone, it hit in a way nothing had in years. He didn't ask what the boy was doing there. Didn't ask who had left the marks on his face. He didn't need to. The answers were written in every shiver. Stallone stood, pulled off his hoodie, and gently draped it over the boy's shoulders. "Come on, kid," he said, offering a hand. "Let's get you warm." They walked quietly to Stallone's car, an old matte black Escalade parked just beside the gym. A car that had lived through too many scripts and sunrises. The boy climbed in slowly, cautious but quick to tear into a protein bar Stallone handed him from the glove box. He ate it in 4 bites. "Name?" Stallone asked, easing into traffic. The boy hesitated. "Malik," he finally said, barely a whisper. "You got a place to go, Malik." Silence. Then, "Not really." The rest of the drive was wordless, through Westwood and into the hushed hills of Bel Air. Stallone's house wasn't showy from the outside. He'd always preferred quiet over glamour. But inside, it was warm. Thick rugs, soft lights, and dark wood furniture that told stories just by creaking. He led Malik into the kitchen, flipped on the overheads. "Sit wherever," he said. Malik paused at the threshold, unsure if his shoes were allowed to touch the floor. Stallone noticed. "You're not trespassing," he added. "You're invited." He put a pot on the stove, poured in broth, chopped leftover chicken and carrots, added macaroni elbows, not fancy, but filling. Malik sat at the counter's edge, eyes scanning the room, lingering on black and white photos Stallone in his early days, championship belts, a glove signed by Joe Frazier. "You a boxer?" the boy asked. Stallone smirked. "Was. Kinda. Made a few movies about it." Malik nodded, uncertain. "I saw Creed," he said. "You were in that." "That's me," Stallone said, setting a bowl in front of him. "Rocky. That's the name." He placed a spoon and a glass of water beside it. "Eat slow. It's hot." Malik took one cautious bite, then another, and another, his shoulders easing with each spoonful, like the warmth was reaching deeper than just his stomach. Stallone sat across from him, sipping his coffee, not asking, not pressing. The boy didn't say much, but the bruise along his jaw, the cuts on his hands, and the way he twitched every time Stallone shifted too quickly, those spoke volumes. Stallone had seen it all before, growing up on tough streets, visiting shelters, meeting kids the system never really saw. When the bowl was empty, Malik wiped his mouth on his sleeve. "Thanks," he said. "No one's fed me in a long time." "Anyone looking for you?" Stallone asked. Malik shook his head. "Mom's gone. Stepfather's not safe." Stallone nodded slowly. "All right," he said. "You're staying here tonight. We'll figure it out tomorrow." He led Malik down the hall to a guest room. Navy blue walls, a TV that hadn't been turned on in months, fresh sheets no one had slept on since his daughter's last visit. Malik hovered in the doorway. "This is mine?" he asked. "Tonight it is," Stallone said. "Bathroom's next door. Towels in the cabinet. You're safe here. Got it?" Malik nodded softly. Not full trust, but no fear. That night, after Malik had showered and tucked into the thick blanket, Stallone sat in his study and scrolled through his contacts. He called an old friend, Lisa Dunham, a retired LAPD sergeant now working as a child advocate in the Valley. She picked up on the third ring. "Sil, what's up?" He explained, short and clear. "I'm not calling the cops. I'm calling you. This kid, he needs help, not a facility." Lisa understood immediately. "I'll be there in the morning. I'll bring options. Keep him safe. Keep him warm." Stallone smiled. Already on it. The next morning, Malik stepped out of the guest room in a two big robe and slippers Stallone had found in the spare closet. He looked cleaner, steadier, but his eyes still carried the weight. Stallone scrambled eggs and made toast. Malik ate like it was his first real breakfast in months. "What happens now?" he asked. "We wait for someone who knows what she's doing," Stallone replied. "You'll like her." When Lisa arrived, Malik clung close to Stallone at first, but her calm tone and quiet patience helped. She knelt beside him and said, "I'm not here to take you away. I'm here to help you land somewhere safe." Malik just nodded. A few hours later, she'd found a short-term foster home with a kind couple in Studio City who specialized in helping kids like him. Stallone offered to drive him there himself. As they pulled up to the small tan house with flower pots on the porch, Malik turned in his seat. "I won't forget what you did." Stallone looked out over the city. "You don't owe me a thing, kid. Just grow up. Be the guy who opens the door for the next kid." Malik smiled, no fear, no hesitation. "Maybe one day I will." Malik's new home in Studio City was small, but full of kindness. Ken and Maria Halvorsen, the foster couple, were quiet, older folks with no children of their own, just a long history of taking in kids who needed a soft place to land. Their bungalow had creaky floorboards, hand-sewn quilts on every bed, and the kind of warmth that came not from money, but from intention. Malik struggled at first. He didn't speak much, didn't ask for things, didn't unpack his bag for the first 2 weeks. The robe Stallone had given him stayed folded at the bottom of his dresser, untouched but never discarded. At night, he stared at the ceiling and replayed those 2 days in Bel Air over and over, the warmth of the kitchen, the way Stallone didn't press him, didn't ask why or how, just gave. The safety had felt unreal, like something out of a film he wasn't supposed to be in. But it wasn't a dream. He remembered the exact texture of the soup, the sound of the man's gravel voice saying, "You're safe here," the moment it registered that someone meant it. School was hard. Malik was small for his age and quiet enough to go unnoticed until someone noticed. The bigger boys mocked his shoes, his silence, the way he never seemed to know what came next. But he remembered Stallone's voice telling him, "Be someone who opens the door for the next person," and it stayed with him like a stone in his pocket. In the school library, he found a biography of Stallone, the real one, not just the actor, but the man who'd been homeless once, slept in bus stations, who'd refused to sell Rocky unless he could star in it himself. Malik read the pages slowly, savoring the idea that someone like that, who had been forgotten, had clawed his way into being remembered. He began to think maybe survival wasn't enough. Maybe he could do something more. In 8th grade, he joined speech club, almost by accident. A teacher overheard him muttering a response in class after being ignored and said, "You have a voice. Use it." At first, Malik stood frozen at the podium, palms sweating, words catching in his throat. But one day he told the story of a man who found him behind a dumpster and gave him soup, a robe, and a chance. He didn't use Stallone's name. He didn't have to. The room went silent. His coach encouraged him to try competitions. By high school, Malik was winning local debates. His voice was deepening, his words more confident, shaped by pain, but not shackled by it. Every year on his birthday, he wrote a letter to Stallone. He never sent them, just folded them carefully and slid them into a shoebox under his bed. Letters filled with updates, confessions, sometimes even questions. Did you know what you were doing that night? Or do you think I'm becoming what you hoped I would? He never expected a response. It was enough to write. It kept the memory alive. Malik earned a scholarship to UCLA, majoring in political science with a focus on social justice. He interned at juvenile courts, working with teens in the same system he'd passed through. At night, he bartended, studied case law, and ran a quiet Instagram account where he posted quotes that had kept him going, one of them a line from Rocky Balboa. "It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." The account slowly grew followers. Some kids messaged him, asking how he got through. He answered every one. Years passed. He graduated, then law school, then passed the bar. At 29, he sat on a folding chair in the back of a courtroom in Compton, watching a judge send a boy barely older than he was when he met Stallone into a juvenile facility. He saw the look in the boy's eyes, not anger, but surrender, and felt something twist inside him. That night, he pulled out the box of letters and reread them. They were stained in places, worn at the corners, but they held his entire journey. It was time. He didn't call, didn't write. Instead, he drove to the address he remembered, 10,412 Montecito Drive. He didn't know if Stallone still lived there. He half expected a new gate, maybe cameras, or just an empty lot. But when he turned onto the familiar drive, the house was still there. More ivy on the walls now, but the same heavy wooden door. He parked across the street, palms sweaty. He stood for a minute, watching the porch, the way the light above the steps still flickered just slightly. Then he knocked. It took longer than he expected. Then the door opened. Stallone was older now, his face deeper with lines, gray streaking through his hair, his frame still strong but slower. He stared for a long second, eyes narrowing, studying. Then slowly, recognition sparked. "Malik?" he said, voice raspy but certain. Malik nodded, eyes already burning. "I told you I'd come back." Stallone didn't speak for a moment. Then he stepped forward and pulled him into a hug. It wasn't theatrical. It wasn't dramatic. Just solid, sure, and full of everything words couldn't say. "Look at you," Stallone murmured. "You made it." They sat in the same kitchen where the soup had once simmered. Malik told him everything, not all at once, but enough. The foster home, the speech team, the shoe box full of letters, the courtroom in Compton. Stallone listened without interruption, sipping his coffee slowly, nodding at the right moments, his eyes heavy with something that wasn't quite sadness and wasn't quite pride, maybe both. "You know," Malik said, "I came here to say thank you. But it feels small now. Too small." Stallone shook his head. "You said it every time you kept going." Malik reached into his satchel and pulled out a thick manila folder. "This is the paperwork," he said. "I'm starting a legal aid clinic. For kids like me. Kids who fall through the cracks. I want your name on the wall, not as a celebrity, as the guy who opened the door." Stallone blinked once, slowly. Then he nodded. "You don't owe me that," he said. "I know," Malik said, "but I owe it to the kid I used to be. And to the next one." Stallone didn't answer right away. He looked out the kitchen window, where the last light of day was fading behind the hills. The same city, the same silence, but something had changed. Not in the world, maybe, but in this house, in this moment. "You ever think," Stallone said, "that maybe we don't save people, not really? Maybe we just give them a place to breathe long enough to save themselves?" Malik smiled. "Maybe, but someone's still got to open the door." They sat quietly after that. No need to fill the air with anything else. Outside, the wind carried the sound of distant traffic. But inside, for the second time in their lives, they were exactly where they needed to be. 3 months after that reunion in Bel Air, the clinic opened its doors in a modest one-story building on Crenshaw Boulevard, nestled between a family-owned grocery store and an old barbershop that still gave $5 fades. The sign above the door read, "The Sly Center for Youth Justice." The font was clean and bold, but what mattered more was what it represented. It wasn't flashy. It didn't need to be. Inside, there were 4 desks, 3 staff members, and a small waiting area with mismatched chairs and a donated coffee machine. But to the kids who walked through the door, some with bruises still fresh, others with paperwork thicker than their school files, it was sanctuary. Malik stood at the entrance on that first morning, key still warm in his hand, and thought back to the night behind the gym. The way Stallone had crouched to his level and said nothing cruel, nothing condescending, just offered warmth without asking why. That moment lived in the foundation of the building now, just like it lived in his spine. The ribbon-cutting ceremony had been small. Stallone didn't want cameras. He didn't want reporters. "This is yours," he told Malik. "I'm just honored to be part of the first page." But word spread anyway. Not about the name on the wall, but about the feeling when you walked inside, like you weren't a case number. Like maybe, for once, someone believed you. One of the first cases they took on was a girl named Tiana, 15, arrested for skipping probation check-ins. She'd been couch surfing since her aunt kicked her out, and no one had followed up on the housing placement that was supposed to happen months ago. Malik met her in holding. She didn't make eye contact, didn't speak for the first 5 minutes, just sat with her arms crossed tight and her face like stone. But Malik didn't push. He just sat beside her, calm and still, until finally she glanced sideways and muttered, "You don't look like no lawyer." Malik smiled softly. "Good. Maybe I look like someone who listens." She didn't smile back, but she didn't look away either. Over the next weeks, Malik fought for her, petitioned the court to vacate the violations, found a temporary home through one of their partner shelters, connected her with a therapist, and personally drove her to her GED testing site. Tiana passed. She showed him the certificate with a shrug, but he saw her eyes glowing. "You got a plan?" he asked. She nodded. "I want to do hair." He grinned. "Then let's find you a salon that'll teach you the trade." For every win like Tiana, there were harder days. Kids lost to the system, judges who cared more about paperwork than people. Nights when Malik came home and sat in the dark of his apartment, drained to the bone. But those nights, he'd open the drawer beside his bed where the letters still lived, reread the one where he promised himself he'd repay the man who gave him a second chance, and he kept going. Stallone came by sometimes, not often, but enough. He'd bring sandwiches from an old deli in Burbank, or books about boxing and life, or just sit in Malik's office with a cup of coffee in his weathered hands. One afternoon, Malik asked him, "Do you think people ever really heal?" Stallone stared out the window for a long while before replying, "I think they stop bleeding. The scars don't go away, but you learn to carry them." Malik nodded. That was enough. That was honest. Years passed. The clinic grew. They opened a second branch in Inglewood, started a summer mentorship program, built partnerships with community colleges, therapists, social workers, parole officers who wanted better outcomes. Malik got invited to speak at law schools, interviews, podcasts, profiles, but he always redirected the attention. This clinic exists because one man made space for one kid. That's it. That's the whole story. And when people asked, "You mean Sylvester Stallone?" he'd smile and say, "No, I mean the guy who gave me soup and a place to sleep when the world felt like a locked door." Stallone, meanwhile, was aging quietly. He didn't film as much anymore. He spent his time painting, walking the hills, writing longhand notes on yellow pads he never shared. One fall evening, he called Malik. "You busy?" he asked. Malik was, but he said no. "You mind if I come by? Got something for you." 30 minutes later, Stallone stepped into the clinic's main office holding a black box. He set it down on the desk without a word. Inside was the original screenplay for Rocky, the one he'd refused to sell without playing the lead. Handwritten notes, coffee stains, edits in red pen. "This belongs here," he said, "in a place that believes in long shots." Malik was speechless. "You sure?" Stallone nodded. "It did what it needed to do for me. Now let it do something for someone else." The script went in a display case in the lobby, beside a quote Stallone had written out on cardstock in his own hand. "Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows, but it ain't unbeatable either." Visitors read it every day. Some paused. Some took photos. Some just walked on. But the ones who needed it, they always stopped. One day, a boy named Andre came through the doors, 10 years old, same age Malik had been. Found by a volunteer outside a bus station with a black eye and a plastic bag full of clothes. He didn't speak, wouldn't eat, flinched at every raised voice. Malik sat beside him in the waiting room, holding a cup of cocoa he wasn't sure the kid would take. But slowly, steadily, Andre leaned in. Didn't talk, just leaned. And Malik knew. He knew it was his turn. That night he brought Andre home, gave him the guest room, left a bowl of soup on the nightstand. Didn't say much. Just stood in the doorway and said, "You're safe here." The next morning, Andre was still asleep when Malik brewed his coffee and stepped outside. He pulled out his phone and texted one person. "You were right. Someone's got to open the door. Today it was me." The reply came a minute later. "Good. I hope he remembers. That's how the world gets better, one door at a time." Years would go by. The clinic would outgrow its original buildings. More names would be added to its board, more stories told, more lives altered. But no matter how much changed, Malik never removed that old script from the glass case. He never stopped telling the story, not the Hollywood version, but the real one. About a cold night, a tired man, a boy behind a gym, and the decision that changed everything. People came and went. The headlines faded. But in the quiet moments, the ones that mattered, there was always a kid, always a door, and always someone on the other side willing to say, "Come in." And that, he believed, would always be enough.